Happy New Year, honeys, and welcome back. I'm very proud to announce that yours truly has landed a year-long position with the Wisconsin Historical Society, and I have now moved cross-country for it. That's right, your episodes are now being recorded out of Madison, Wisconsin. It was quite the road trip my brother and I had out here, and yes, I am struggling to go from Phoenix sunshine to the dead of Midwest winter, but you know what? We're gonna make it. Now, of course, I'm bringing this up for a reason, honeys. In order to dedicate my all to this opportunity, I will be scaling back Highbrow Honey accordingly. This means that while you will get 2 episodes in this month of January on every other Thursdays, it will be the last month of bi-weekly full-length drops. From the end of January on out, you can expect your regular Tuesday Beesnesses as well as once monthly full-length episodes and the occasional surprise special. I wanted to take this time to update you all on our new schedule and to thank you all for your ongoing support and streaming. It has really kept up my spirits during this long and very often discouraging job hunt. It's been a wonderful way to expand my horizons, this podcast, and I'm excited to begin a new form of public engagement in my new role. And so, with our formalities out of the way, we have your headlines, honeys, hand-curated from this first week of the new year. And without further ado, let's dive in. Our first headline, the largest survey yet of David Hockney prints, has opened in Palm Springs. Our source for this story, Hype Art, describes Hockney as, quote, Britain's most celebrated living artist. They went on to write, quote, his works reframe conventional notions of technology and ways of being, end quote. The new retrospective exhibition will be titled Perspectives Should Be Reversed and will go on view until March 31st at Palm Springs Art Museum. This headline caught our eye because it presents nearly 200 works produced over the course of Hockney's very famous career, everything from his Xerox experiments in the 1980s to his more recent pandemic-era iPad drawings. We also heard that the 21st edition of MoMA's Film Preservation Festival presented rare cinematic masterpieces. The film festival, known as To Save and Project, is described as an annual celebration showing cinematic treasures from archives around the globe in rare experiences. It runs this year from January 9th through the 30th and will open and close with the world premiere restoration of Frank Borzage's silent masterpiece, Seventh Heaven, from 1927, in addition to a reconstruction of Charlie Chaplin's World War I comedy, Shoulder Arms, from 1918. Our sources listed several other very big names for this, not only Westerns, but also adaptations, plus internationals like Osama Muhammad's Stars in Broad Daylight from 1988. In a particularly intriguing offering, some silent films will be accompanied by live piano. For example, Robert Wine's Raskolnikov of 1923. The headline caught our eye as it's become the museum's means of presenting cinematic restorations from its collection and hopes to explain the importance of preserving precious audiovisual heritage for future generations by giving current ones an opportunity to see said restorations. Shifting towards institutional and legal stories, a descendant of Hilma F. Klint has opposed a new David Zwirner Gallery deal. The relative in question is Eric F. Klint, the artist's great-grandnephew and the foundation board chair. He gave a why to The Guardian. He said that the gallery's representation would lead to the, quote, commercialization of her work, end quote. He believes that all 193 paintings in the series Paintings for the Temple, made between 1906 and 1915, are subject to foundation statuettes made on its 1972 founding, which necessitate that all works be kept and viewed together as intended. Eric F. Klint also called the deal a hostile takeover and was the only one of the 5 board members to vote against the proposal to make David Zwirner the foundation's representing gallery. The gallery itself is keeping relatively quiet about the so-called power struggle, releasing only a spokesperson's statement confirming the existence of discussions between the gallery and the foundation to, quote, establish a long-term partnership aimed at further expanding Hilma F. Klint's global legacy, end quote, by representing the artist's estate. The intrigue behind this headline, of course, is the questions about motives, legacy, and money. As we said, it's codified that none of the Temple series works can be sold or dispersed ever. Only works created afterwards, 1916 to the artist's death in 1944, may be sold as a means of financing the preservation of the 1,300 pieces in the foundation's care. Obviously, commercial gallery representation could easily lead to the undermining of this no-sell rule. We also couldn't help notice that Eric is not alone. Back in 2022, Johann af Klint, the artist's grandnephew and former chairman of the foundation, as well as Hedvig Ersman, a great-grandniece of the artist, loudly opposed the creation and sale of 162 NFTs from this same Paintings for the Temple series. We'll keep you updated as the story develops. In a bit more of a humorous headline, one Mr. Doodle's plans for a doodle-covered seaside home are facing pushback from the UK town it's set to be in. Mr. Doodle's real name is Sam Cox. He's a 28-year-old best known for covering his Tenterden mansion in his Keith Haring-like drawings in a 2-year process, largely documented on social media. But Cox is now facing pushback from officials over his plans to create a new rusted metal facade seaside home featuring sides laser cut with his signature doodles. Local news outlets have reported that the town council of Dungeness, a hamlet in the town of Lydd on the southern coast of Kent, claimed that the facade would, quote, not be in keeping with the historical value of Dungeness, end quote. And I'll do a translation of that. They're worried it would potentially overload the town with tourism. And they also claim that it could, quote, impact the environmental value of the area, end quote. By this, the council means they fear the facade could endanger wildlife, which might get caught in the metal openings. Yet the designer of the home, architect Guy Holloway, defended the appearance. He made claims that it will be, quote, visually subtle, end quote, as it's meant to, quote, merge into the landscape, end quote. It will also be in line with other rusting metal structures like abandoned railroads in that area. Holloway also said the doodle apertures are very small, therefore similar in scale to the facade of another existing Dungeness building designed by Holloway's firm around 10 years ago called the Pobble House. The architect says, quote, there have not been any problems with wildlife being trapped within the facade. We would therefore envisage this facade would perform in the same way and this wouldn't be an issue, end quote. Reporting done by Kent Online tells us the future of the home will be decided later this month by the Folkestone and Hythe District Councils, aka the local government authorities on such matters. The first week of the new year also saw Luigi Mangione street and protest art popping up around the world. Mangione-inspired works have not only been appearing across the U.S., but internationally as many publics find solidarity with his motivations and some even protest on his behalf. LA-based local medias have reported sightings of a hand-painted pink billboard reading, quote, free Luigi Mangione, end quote, along an interstate near the city, and various social media users have shared recent street art featuring the Luigi video game character in Alberta, Canada, and Columbus, Ohio. Others in Tucson and later some in Santiago, Chile, shared images of spray-painted walls with the phrase deny, delay, defend, though Hyperallergic have not been able to verify the authenticity of the Chilean art. I can imagine as his trial proceeds, similar sightings will continue. Also last week, an exhibition at a Texas museum was slammed by state officials. Titled Diaries of Home, the exhibition is hosted by the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth and includes 13 artists, lots of them dealing with mature themes. A few examples include LaToya Ruby Frazier, Nan Golden, Debbie Grossman, Letitia Huckabee, Catherine Opie, and Carrie Mae Weems. According to the museum's website, it, quote, features works by women and non-binary artists who explore the multi-layered concepts of family, community, and home, end quote. Yet the show is facing criticism and protest from local viewers as well as elected officials for images they believe could be harmful to children. The situation has escalated now to a formal complaint filed with the Fort Worth Police Department. This was confirmed via a PD spokesperson email to our sources, reading, quote, it is currently an active investigation, so information will not be shared at this time, end quote. The complaints were especially aimed at images by photographer Sally Mann, who often includes highly stylized images of her children in the nude in family portraits, which the museum describes as, quote, intimate and compelling, end quote. The complaints come from all sides. Tarrant County Judge Tim O'Hare told the Dallas Express, quote, "There are images on display at this museum that are grossly inappropriate at best," end quote, and locals speaking to the Dallas Express complained of, quote, "pedophilia and, quote, child rape," end quote, despite no explicit sexual activity in the photos. The why we care behind this one is best said in the emailed words of Julie Tribble, Executive Director of Artists at Risk Coalition, a nonprofit that works to safeguard artistic freedoms. Quote, "The controversy surrounding Sally Mann's photographs is deeply troubling and is not an isolated incident. Rather, it reflects a broader, escalating trend of censorship targeting artists and institutions whose work challenges societal norms or explores sensitive topics. In recent years, organized efforts, often driven by political figures, advocacy groups, and community actors, have sought to discredit or remove artworks addressing themes like identity, gender, sexuality, race, and family. This growing wave of censorship, which disproportionately targets women, LGBTQ+ creators, and artists from historically marginalized groups, often relies on the construction of a controversy as a pretext for a wider purge of targeted artwork," end quote. We also got word that a San Francisco gallery is planning a major show to ride Leonora Carrington's market wave. As we heard in the Beesnesses of 2024, that was a big year for the market of the Surrealist master. For example, we saw her 1945 painting Les Distractions de Dagobert set a new record of $28.5 million for the British artist, despite her previous high being just $3.3 million, also set at Sotheby's 2 years prior. And who could forget her 1951 cat head sculpture that sold at Sotheby's New York last year for $11.4 million? Jumping on this popularity, the gallery Wendy Norris of San Francisco is opening Leonora Carrington Mythopoesis on January 21st. The show will be noteworthy as it will feature roughly 15 works created between 1940 and 1987 and aims to highlight the underexplored range of mediums that she worked, as well as the origin stories and literary influences on Carrington. It will form only the 5th Carrington exhibition, as well as the first solo show of her work in San Francisco in a decade. A bit of exciting news, honeys, as the year turns, Frida Kahlo, Henri Matisse, and more are entering the public domain. There were many big names included in our art news and hyperallergic sources for this. They include, of course, Kahlo, Matisse, as well as André Derain, a French co-founder of the Fauvist movement, Robert Capa, a 20th century photojournalist, combat documentarian, and Magnum Photos co-founder, as well as certain texts by William Faulkner, Virginia Woolf, Ernest Hemingway, and more. Let's begin with the how and the why of their entering the public domain at all. In the United States, the UK, most of the EU, and South America, works of individual authorship generally lose their protections after, quote, life plus 70 years, end quote. This means that the works of authors, artists, etc., who passed in 1954 are now unprotected. Things are a little different in most of Africa and Asia, however. Their protections stand for a term of life plus 50 years. So works by creators who died in 1974 are now copyright-free in those regions of the world. Copyright guidelines also state that commissioned works, including books and other media published between 1924 and 1978, enter the public domains of the US, the UK, most of EU, and South America 95 years after they are released, meaning that works published in 1929 also lose their copyright protections this year. Examples of such commissions losing their protections would be Tintin and Popeye for cartoon characters, but it also covers movies, so now ones from 1929 are in the public domain, including Alfred Hitchcock's first talking film, Blackmail. We're taking a little time for this headline, honeys, because many creatives celebrate the entrance of new materials into the public domain because it allows for so much freer uses of works, ones that may have been previously considered copyright violations especially. So this entry of new material is particularly important for Hollywood authors and artists seeking to adapt beloved characters into new formats and stories. But we must warn the honeys, this does not mean it's a total free-for-all. Let's take a look at a quote from Laura Ricciardi, a teacher of art law for the Arts Management program. She clarifies, quote, elements within that work might be protected by other legal mechanisms beyond copyright. For example, if Frida Kahlo's estate has trademarked the use of her name on coffee mugs, a person who is producing coffee mugs using one of Kahlo's paintings as well as her name might be liable for trademark infringement based on the use of her name, even if there's no copyright problem with regards to the painting, end quote. This sort of legal deal is also known as rights of publicity, and we suggest you do not ignore them. This last week came with a particularly exciting discovery/announcement. A rare 17th century painting of a black and a white woman has debuted after its export ban. The work in question is titled Two Women Wearing Cosmetic Patches and is dated to around 1655. It was most likely made for Roger Kenyon, a local politician of the day from Lancashire, northern England, with the commission reason unknown. Yet it's exceptionally rare as a 1600s painting featuring both a black and a white woman, even more so because the two face each other in equally fancy dress. The work is now freshly cleaned and on public display for the first time at Compton Verney, a historic manor in the English county of Warwickshire, following an 18-month conservation and research project which revealed new information about the painting's social connections to its context. Although initial contemporary readings saw the work as showing the women being equal status, this is really unlikely given the exclusive role of attendants assigned to black sitters during this time. Officials later decided that the reality is that the black woman figure here is meant to be the anti-moral as well as foreign foil to the white woman figure. And I mentioned an export ban, and that's a fascinating piece of all this too. The unusual painting remained in the Kenyon family until an auction purchase of it in 2021. But due to its rarity and significance, the painting was instead placed under a temporary export ban the same year. This bought time for a UK institution to acquire the work for £300,000 or $380,000 US, thus saving it for the British public. So we care about this work because of this kind of fascinating journey it's gone on, but also how well it reflects the cultural anxieties of its time and deeply embedded racist and misogynistic beliefs. Said the display's curator, Jane Simkis, quote, "It's an incredibly complicated and troubling painting, but it's also unique in British art and allows us to widen our understanding of how people in the 17th century understood issues that are still important today," end quote. The component of the painting that best exemplifies these anxieties and beliefs is the cosmetic patches on the women's faces, these silk, satin, or leather patches applied with amnimal glue to cover scars or blemishes. The practice of cosmetic patches dates back to ancient times and onwards to today, but mid-17th century England was a place full of radical political and social upheaval following the British Civil War, which featured the execution of King Charles I in 1649. The upheaval resulted in a moral panic over excessive female vanity, and Writes Art News, quote, "In 1649, Parliament considered but eventually rejected a proposed ban of," inner quotes here, "the vice of painting and wearing black patches and immodest dress of women," end all quotes. The image contains this strongly worded warning above the two women's heads, describing the use of cosmetic patches as an exercise of pride that will condemn the sinner to hell. It was no help either that the patches were perceived as a foreign originating concept and therefore extra barbaric and threatening right in this time. If you can see it in person, honeys, let me know so I can be jealous. We also got official word that Takashi Murakami and Louis Vuitton are launching a new collaborative collection this month. Coming over 20 years after their first collaboration, the pair is dropping this new collection in 2 installments. The first selection will debut globally on the 1st of the new year, 2025, containing new versions of the original collaboration, which have been enhanced by modern digital technology. The second product launch in March of 2025 will include leather goods, footwear, and other accessories with Murakami's unique motifs alongside reinterpretations of Louis Vuitton logos and goods in the artist's signature rainbow color ranges and/or adorned with the artist's anime-inspired characters. We care because of the fashion history connections and its real-time consequences. Murakami and Louis Vuitton's 2003 spring-summer collection was one of the most high-profile collaborations between a fashion brand and a visual artist of its time, and the new collaboration features some similar concepts. We also noticed Murakami is growing increasingly involved with the fashion world. He launched, back in November of 2024, an independent footwear brand with its own shoe collection called Ohana Hatake in collaboration with an existing footwear company. A sadder headline, Pippa Gardner, an ingenious conceptual tinkerer, has passed at 82. She died December 30th, 2024 in LA. The news was shared by Gardner's official Instagram account, which has been run by her friends in recent years, as the artist was legally blind after battling with chronic lymphocytic leukemia and vision problems. Born Philip Gardner in Evanston, Illinois in 1942, the artist grew up in the heyday of mid-century consumerism, with new post-war gadgets and appliances capturing her imagination as they flooded markets. Gardner sought ways to reinvent and subvert their purposes. And also, no, I didn't just dead name her. She continued to reference her own birth name throughout her career. Art News describes her as, quote, a conceptual artist and designer whose playful inventions hacked consumer culture as much as herself, end quote. Gardner had told curator Fiona Allison Duncan in 2024, quote, I just want to make sure my body ends up where it belongs when I die, in the junkyard with the appliances I've made fun of throughout my career, end quote. We also got word that a new restoration has uncovered several 16th century religious paintings that once covered the ceiling of the historic Temple of Our Lady of the Assumption Church. A little relevant history of the building: the church was constructed while the town was designated a district head during the early 16th century. Plus, it reflects the imported architectural styles of mudéjar, featuring ornate motifs believed to have been originated by Muslim craftspeople in the 13th century, and the plateresque style, a late Gothic and early Renaissance aesthetic brought over by the Franciscan. Projects on the building, located in Santa Maria Huaramanguero in Mexico, were completed by a team of professionals, including the Ministry of Culture of the Government of Mexico, alongside the National Institute of Anthropology and History. The team's main goal was to conserve the roof of the church, but instead they found ancient images of saints and martyrs, known as hagiographic works, rarely found in this region of Mexico, which had been painted over during the 1940s. The religious iconography was discovered in 3 pictorial layers during this uncovering. The oldest of the layers was dated to the 16th century, mainly consisting of tempera paint applied in thin glazes to depict various characters. These include the saints Paul, Peter, Agatha of Cantanea, and Catherine of Alexandria, but they were retouched with oil paints in the following century to add volume and colors to these figures' clothes. The second layer shows evidence of a restoration effort in the 20th century which used acrylic paints to touch up the faces of the saints. According to the Institute of Anthropology and History, this work was pretty faithful to the original drawing, but the efforts were, quote, primarily intended to embellish the ornamentation of the presbytery, end quote. The oldest and most external layer, of course, was white paint with blue designs done during remodeling work in the 1940s to cover said iconography. And finally, honeys, the never-ending search for Cleopatra's tomb has yielded a new treasure trove of ancient artifacts. Let's talk details of the find first. It was made at Taposiris Magna Temple Complex near Alexandria, Egypt, where some researchers believe the tomb of Cleopatra VII is located. At the site, they found hundreds of ancient coins portraying the Queen of Egypt, a marble statue, and ceremonial vessels from between the 3rd and 1st century, aka the Ptolemaic era. The discovery was made by Dominican archaeologist Kathleen Martinez in collaboration with the Universidad Nacional Pedro Enriquez Urena in Santo Domingo, then later announced by Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. That announcement came right at the end of December 2024. Of course, we care about this in part because Cleopatra's grave, as I said, is a lost treasure constantly searched for. The discovery casts doubt on the theory that points to Alexandria as the resting place for Cleopatra. Perhaps clinging on to this theory, some disagree that the marble head found at Taposiris Magna depicts the face of the queen. They point out discrepancies between it and other works confirmed to be depicting her. Yet it's possible, as Harvard Assistant Professor of Classics Irene Sotomayor speculates, the missing Ptolemaic tombs are probably all together as well as underwater, as parts of ancient Alexandria are already submerged. Taposiris Magna just so happens to be on the coast. Regardless of any insights into the ruler's final resting place that this find might give, the objects found speak to the experiences and lives of the 99%, so they're important for new historical learning. Okay, honeys, that is all I have for you today. Hope you're having a great start to your 2025. We will talk soon. Stay warm, stay hydrated, and take care of yourselves. This podcast is produced, created, hosted, formerly edited, and fact-checked by master's degree holder Celia Bugnout. Chris Meinhold is responsible for our editing, mixing, and our intro and outro music. Special thanks to him for that. And as always, remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, so on all your favorite listening as well as social media channels.